dobro večer i dobrodošli na još jedan filozofski teatar. Za one koji trebaju prijevod, imamo simultani prijevod. Ako niste uzeli slušalice, nalaze se ispred. I'll switch to English now. Hello, and welcome to Zagreb again for Franco, and welcome Boby for the first time to Zagreb.
Lovely to be here.
So let's start with Boby. Britain is in a big mess. Theresa May was several days ago meeting Trump for the first time. She was in Ankara the day before. Britain decided to leave the European Union, and you just arrived from London. How is it to arrive from London to the European Union today? How does it look like today in Britain?
Britain is very divided, but I would say that Brexit is mainly an English issue and an English problem, because the majority of people in Scotland and Northern Ireland would rather remain within the European Union. So, but you know, even throughout England, it's been a very the vote was it's been very divisive, and people have strong opinions on either side, either to remain or to leave. So yeah, it felt very strange the day 24th of June. It felt very strange when we left the EU. So I don't know what to say, you know. I don't know what to say. It's kind of.
We'll come back to that topics. Franco, where did you come from?
I come from Athens.
How is it there?
Well, I was there for a week. As you know, Documenta 14 will take place in Athens, a brave decision of the organizers of Documenta, because German authorities are not so happy that German money goes to the lazy people of Greece. When I was there for a conference, and I met lots of people. I think that the atmosphere there is an atmosphere of being beyond the abyss, beyond, and so they have a distant look to the things of this world. They already live in the after Europe age, in my opinion, and of course resentment is widespread, resentment and anger, but also the expectation that something new may come out from the blue, may come out from the final collapse. Everybody is expecting the final collapse, right? Is here anyone who does not feel that the collapse is coming?
Okay, before we come to the collapse, hopefully not tonight, and before we return to the future, let's go a bit back to the past. Why are you here, the two of you? How did you meet for the first time?
Well, if I remember well, we in the real world, we met 2-3 years ago in a British bookstore. I don't remember the name of the bookstore.
Foyles, Charing Cross Road.
Yeah, Foyles.
It used to be St. Martin's School of Art.
Yeah. I was presenting a book, and at the end of my talk, Boby came. We never met. I mean, I did not know him. He did not know me. But it was. But to be more, to tell the truth, I think that we met already many years ago, at the beginning of the 80s, maybe, in a dream, in a nightmare. The nightmare of the coming no future. Not not in our bodily existence, but in a sort of spiritual life. Am I true?
Bobby, which year was that?
I would say it was maybe 2 years into Margaret Thatcher's premiership. So either 1980 or 1981, you know.
How was that time in Britain at that time of Thatcher?
It felt very repressive because we were aware as teenagers that, well, you know, as politically turned on teenagers, that there was, you know, Margaret Thatcher was waging class war, and there was, we were already feeling the effects of that. You know, there was riots all over the UK. You had riots in Toxteth in Liverpool, Brixton in London, St Paul's in Bristol. I think there was also riots in Manchester. So, and then, you know, after that, a couple of years after that, you had the miners' strike, which was, I think, the big turning point in the UK. That was when Margaret Thatcher defeated the miners. She kind of completely defeated the trade union movement and working class people. And so I lived through all of that, and it was very painful. It's painful to see working class people treated like that. When you see photographs of the Battle of Orgreave, which was Orgreave was a coking plant, and the NUM, the miners, went and they tried to stop the scab lorries taking the coke out of the plant to go to like scab pits to keep, you know, to make more coal. There was, you know, a phalanx of police. They were basically the pickets, the miners were charged repeatedly by policemen on horseback. And, you know, they were smashed to pieces. And when you now look at the photographs of that, it looks like a war, you know. But this was, and she was fully supported by the Murdoch press, the BBC, you know, they had the full force of the British media, the British establishment, political establishment, you know, working against the unions and the working class. So that's what it was like, you know. It was dark, and it felt like things were never gonna get better.
And there was a band which was playing the song No Future, right?
Well, that came a little bit before that. It was the Sex Pistols. Johnny Rowan was a dystopian prophet of punk, and he sang No Future back in 1977. 1981, when we had the riots in Toxteth and St Paul's, the Specials were #1 in the charts with Ghost Town. So the sound, you know, the bands that I loved as a young, you know, as a teenager, they were soundtracking what was happening politically and culturally in the country.
Franco, what is the importance of the year 1979?
Well, 1979 is a dark year in my memory. I have a sort of fixation with dates, you know, and also I have a sort of malady called the hypermnemosis, which consists in being unable to forget anything. So I precisely remember what happened that day and the other day. I can tell you that 79 is marked, one, by the victory of a lady who said there is no such thing as society. Only there are individuals and enterprises competing for success and profit. This was the beginning of the end. This was the declaration of an infinite war, which is growing and growing from that moment to now. That lady is Margaret Thatcher, and she started a sort of economic war but the economic war sooner or later becomes bloody war, racial war, religious war, terrorism, violence, and so on. So we have to thank Margaret Thatcher if now fascism is spreading everywhere. Well, 1979. For me, I mean,
you said you don't forget.
No, I don't forget nothing. And on one day of April 7th, in Italy, a group of friends, my friends, have been arrested. The most well-known name is Tony Negri, but Tony Negri was not alone. Hundreds of people have been arrested in that day and accused of being part of a terrorist organization called Red Brigades. Absolutely false. They were libertarians, communists, with no relation with the Stalinist organization of the Red Brigades. Anyway, intellectuals, workers, students have been, and they were my friends. So I told myself, oh, better to go away, and I went away. And I went to London for a few days. Then I took a flight, a company called, well, I forgot the name of the company.
Freddie Laker.
Huh?
Freddie Laker.
No. It was a low-cost company of that age, Laker maybe. Anyway, a sort of company that flied me to New York City. And I spent the following 3 years in the city of New York, the most exciting time of my life.
And you were writing, that's also one of the connections between the two of you, musical reviews, right?
Well, I was working as a musical writer for an Italian magazine called Musica 80, Music 80. And yes, obviously everybody knows that London and New York in those years were the musical capitals of the world, with a different tone, with a different color. The punk in London and the no wave in New York City. So I was writing about the musical scene, but of course I was interested in what music meant beyond the musical dimension, the social, the political, the cultural, the literary implications of music in those years were relevant for me. I earned my life this way,
Boby.
Writing about people like him, criminals.
And now it's the other way around, no? It is Primal Scream who named the new album influenced by a philosopher whom you knew in France, whose name is Félix Guattari, and who invented the term chaosmosis. Could you tell us, Boby, why did you choose precisely this term, and what does it mean when it's applied to music, and what Primal Scream does?
Pardon me. I found the term, the word chaosmosis in Bifo's book, Heroes. And he refers to that word a lot. He refers to Félix Guattari. And I thought it was a really good word. And I thought it intrigued me. And when I read Bifo's, the way he analysed the word and what it meant, I projected that onto like a rock and roll record. And also I found that it was maybe a good word to describe the the creative process, where as an art, because of the way life is, modern life, we've got information technology, we're bombarded non-stop. You've got 24-hour news, just the computers, smartphones. They're now part of our central nervous system, and I don't think as human beings we're really built to accommodate that. And I think we get this non-stop information overload, and most of it is depressing. And, I just felt that, apart from the other stuff in life, like relationships, how earning a living, paying a mortgage, getting a flat, or, just that as an artist, or like anybody, you absorb this stuff, good or bad, and it's like, the news is normally depressing. You turn the radio on, the news is edited and presented in such a way, for vested interests, or, whether that be corporate or governmental. It's depressing, it's upsetting when I hear what the government in my country are doing to our National Health Service, or, the way they, through austerity measures, they're cutting funding to public services and running down, public services, and I just don't know. It makes me angry and it makes me sad, but I just felt that to absorb this information and these bad feelings, rather than let it get me down and make me negative or nihilistic, it's better to, as an artist, to put that information and that negative feeling, which I internalize into my work or our work, and make a song, make a piece of music, write a poem, try and make it poetic, make it a work of art, and then for me it's cathartic, and also for the audience, maybe for someone who listens to the song at home or in a live concert experience, they can identify with the atmosphere of the song or the lyric, and particularly if it's an angry song like Golden Rope, they can, as I say, they can identify with it, and we can turn that ugliness into something beautiful. So that was it really. I thought it was chaosmosis was a lovely term to describe the creative process, and I thought I could apply it to our record, and that was it.
Franco, in your last book, which is called End, the phenomenology of the end, you talk about cognitive mutation, precisely along the lines what Boby just mentioned, that today we are bombarded with so many informations that the human brain is not even able to absorb it anymore, and that with the creation and development of artificial intelligence, for instance, something is happening in the brain. You don't call it evolution, you call it mutation. So, can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, end, phenomenology of the end. The title is about the conjunction, end, but also about the end of the conjunction itself. I try to understand what happens when, in the field of communication, of daily life, we shift from the sphere of conjunction to the sphere of connection. What is conjunction? Conjunction is the meeting of bodies. And also conjunction is the creation of meaning through the relation between bodies. I frankly speaking, if I can tell you the truth, I don't understand so well when Boby talks. His English is too difficult for me. But I understand everything. I understand everything because I look at his face, I feel his presence. You know what I mean? I mean, the daily communication between bodies is not about syntactical understanding of fragment of language. No, it's much more about being in the same space. It's an empathic communication. Well, when you shift into the dimension of connection, everything changes, because connection is a syntactical relation between machines. that have been formatted in a certain way. And our brain are obliged to become more and more machines, because if you want to interact with a machine, you have to talk the language of the machine itself. I say in my strange semiological parlance, then we shift from the dimension of bodily interpretation to the dimension of syntactical interpretation. Something happens for many reasons in the human brain, and I call it a mutation. It's not a change, a transformation. It's a mutation in the biological, in the strong sense of the word. I mean, the very neurological structure of our brain is slowly changing, mutating in a connective direction. We have to be more and more formatted according the rules, the syntactic rules of the machine itself. So I wonder, what happens in the space of one generation, 2 generations, to people who, for instance, start using a GPS machine, a GPS smartphone in order to walk in the street? What will happen to the sense of orientation when they will find their way through the map, the electronic map? They will lose the ability to distinguish by smell, by memory, by looking at places, by losing their way, and so on and so on. The sense of orientation is definitely changed. But think about language in the age of the Google Translator. You know that the last generation of Google Translator, think of what happened in the last year to the translation. Now, translation is becoming the ability to capture our ability of interpretation. Now the machine is producing our language, in a sense. I am not a technophobe. I don't dislike that machine. I like the connective machine. The problem is that I want to be aware of what is happening to my brain, to the brain of the next generations. I want to be able to understand how will we be able to feel pleasure, how will we be able to smell and to feel the eroticism of language when we will be formatted according to the rule of the machine. I have not an answer. I wonder about that, and I think that this is going to be the main problem of the time that comes. You say, no, the main problem is fascism, is war. Yes, but fascism, war are strongly related to our inability to feel the pleasure of language, to feel the pleasure of the body of the other. The body of the other is becoming more and more a sort of dangerous object that we don't want to approach because we don't know it, because we have lost the erotic pleasure of social life. So social life is becoming a sort of permanent war, competition, and syntactic interpretation. How can we reactivate the erotic body in the age of connective machines? This is my question.
To me, it seems that Primal Scream, it sounds a bit unexpected.
It is quite close.
Has a part of the answer. In what sense? Primal Scream, with your album at the beginning of the 90s, Screamadelica, made a revolution in music, in the sense that you were one of the first rock and roll bands who started to experiment and implement with acid house. So on the one hand, you had punk movement, then in the 80s, which was also in a way a reaction to Margaret Thatcher, you had the techno parties taking place in old factories, and you succeeded to catch this moment of that zeitgeist and this new technological revolution, which in a way, coming back to what I'm trying to unite, comes back to what Franco said, that, you know, when you give a concert in front of 20, 50,000 people, you precisely have this bodily connection, no? Isn't it like that? How do you see it, Bobby? Because on the other hand, when we spoke yesterday, you said as well that you feel that the audiences today, but also the rock and roll bands, are not so politicized anymore. That everything became an industry and people come because of fun.
You know, the music industry always was an industry. You know, even before punk, you know, it was a corporate industry owned by Warner Brothers or CBS, which then became Sony. So I'm not really interested in that. I think it's more I think in the 70s, the 60s and 70s were very politicized times. And I think that musicians of that time were very, they felt it, whether it was the Beatles, you know, John Lennon particularly, or even bands like Jefferson Airplane. You know, there was, and of course the punk bands that came after, like the Sex Pistols and the Clash. They were kind of, it was in the air, you know, it was in the air. And then I think somehow in the 90s this got lost. You know, like people, I don't know why, I noticed it in Britain when you had like they call it Britpop, that the whole thing was apolitical, you know. Whereas like say Stone Roses, they're political, Primal Scream were political, you know, and I think we were a bit older, but also we were like the punk generation. You know, so we kind of grew up through the 60s and 70s, but I think that it's just a cultural thing, really, you know, and I think that I think people they react or they're influenced by how they grow up and what's in the air, and somehow it's just rock has ceased to be, I would say, like the voice of young people. You know, and it ceased to be that a long time ago. I mean, I love rock music, I love rock and roll, and I think it's always going to be a valid form for young people to express their frustrations, angers, ecstasies. But yeah, I think it's, you know, we're a long way away from punk and post-punk, and that was a different time. It's nearly 30, 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, so I don't know. You know, I don't really hear any kind of political rock and roll at the moment. I haven't heard it for a long, long time. So I don't know why that is.
And when it comes to music, what do you think is the expression of the young people today? Which kind of music? Is there something?
I don't know. I really don't know.
But for both of you, for you and Bifo, both of you at one place, I think you said it explicitly, that punk was the year zero for you. And you also mention it in your books that punk was a kind of political subjectivation. So where is this time lost? Can we really follow it, trace it back to Thatcher's time, that there was this kind of big reaction to these austerity measures and politics, and then it faded?
There was a lot of protest in music during the Thatcher years. You know, you had bands like Style Council, which was Paul Weller from The Jam. It was his band after The Jam, the Style Council. They were very political. They did a lot of political benefits, like miners' benefits. Even bands like New Order played miners' benefits. The Smiths, you know, they played miners' benefits. You know, Bronski Beat. There was the Specials. They were very political. You know, Jerry Darmers was the guy behind the Free Nelson Mandela campaign. He was the principal songwriter in the Specials, and you know, there was, as I say, artists in British music were reactive towards Thatcherism in a very, very big way, and somehow, you know, it just, music in the UK got less and less and less political, and maybe that was the effects of Thatcherism. Maybe, you know, people were growing up with being more selfish, more atomized, more divided, and less comradely, I guess, or, you know, I don't know. You know, because the people that are, I don't know. But it's just the way it unfolded was like that.
But how do you feel? It also changed in the way that in the 70s and the 80s you had a lot of small gigs, concerts in more intimate spaces. And today even Primal Scream plays at big festivals. Here in Croatia we have a huge festival. You come there, you see big billboards for corporations and everything is corporatized. How do you feel as Primal Scream when you go to such festivals?
Festivals are where they're the place that where I earn a living, you know, in my band earn a living. So we don't have any choice in that, you know, and they get corporate sponsorship and it's just where we have to go to work. So, you know, of course, it would be beautiful to come here and play in a theatre like this. This would be more intimate and more charged and more erotic. You know, I think, you know, for me, as a fan of music, I would rather see a band play in a small theatre or a club rather than a stadium or an arena or a festival. But I can understand why people enjoy a festival experience, you know, because they get very subsumed in the big crowd, you know, they're part of something bigger than them. They've been at a football match, you know, they get taken away. So it's valid, as you know, it's equally as valid. You know, they're both good. Our band we've had great experiences in clubs and festivals and everywhere. You know, it just depends how the band feel and how the band play on the night and how the audience react. You know, some audiences are sexier than others.
So Franco, if even music festivals and rock music is disappearing and music festivals become swallowed by consumerism, is there a way out of capitalism? For the recent years you claim that there is no future anymore and that it's finished, and especially now after Trump's victory. Let's speak about Trump as well a bit now. Like the ban on the immigrants and Muslims, the wall in Mexico, ecology, the complete reconfiguration of geopolitics, which I think is the most serious reconfiguration of geopolitics after the fall of the Berlin Wall. What is happening with China, the new position of UK, where we will also return with Russia. How do you see the situation today?
Let me go back to music.
Of course, I would love to speak about music only. Everyone speaks about Trump.
I want to answer your question, but starting from the point of view of what I understand of music, which is not much, but something. Let's go back to the scenario of...
just a second, I have to explain for the audience that Franco actually knows something about music. He was one of the founders of the cult Radio Alice pirate station in Bologna, which was politicized, and it was
76, 77. Yep. So at the beginning of the phenomenon that then eventually has been called punk. I did not know what punk was when I was in Radio Alice, but some friends were coming from London and saying extraordinary things, something new is happening there, punk, reggae, music. Then I went to New York City and I discovered another face of that musical situation, which was the no wave. I want to start from that point because it's helpful for understanding what is our possibility, our condition now. Punk, the punk movement became known for this idea of the end of the future, which is a very interesting concept. Someone said, oh, crazy people, end of future, what does it mean? But you remember that the 12th century, the past century, starts with the Manifesto Futurista of Filippo Marinetti, who says the future, speed, acceleration, the machine, the expansion, and so on and so on. This kind of trust, this kind of expectation, the future was sort of worshipped by the futurist culture. And so, in my opinion, the 20th century is essentially based on this trust, in this worshipping of the future. All of a sudden, at a certain point, from London, we receive the news that the future is over. And, but in New York City, the no-wave scene and the no-wave philosophy, if I may say, was obviously very close to this idea, to this nervous perception of the metropolitan life, to this sentiment that something was broken in the machine of modernity, let's say. But at the same time, I perceived another sentiment, which came maybe more from California, The Resident, the Tuxedo Moon, and so on, and came also from another dimension of the music of those years, like Philip Glass, for instance, that kind. And so the London punk was all about the end of future. In the American scene, I also perceived a sort of experimentation of the new. And I come to Trump. Trump is the final demonstration that future is the hell. And we will not escape to this hell. We are already there. But simultaneously, we have to think that, first of all, the hell, also in the hell, some people may find some space where they live a good life. Also at the hell, it's possible to be happy. Remember that. Notwithstanding the doomsayers. Also at the hell, you can find a place of happy solidarity. Secondly, at the hell, we have to experiment the possibility of going beyond the hell. The hell is not forever. The problem is that if we want to overcome this shameful situation of stupidity, idiocy, ignorance, violence, and racism, if we want to go beyond, we have to invent something. It's not politics that will save us from the Ku Klux Klan.
What is it then?
It's not politics, it's knowledge. Knowledge is the force that can give us the possibility of overcoming the present situation. So when I think to Trump, I see now, today I've spent the afternoon looking at websites that said that people are concentrating in the airports of the United States, particularly at JFK of New York, with signs saying, deport Trump, refugees welcome, and so on. This is the starting point. A movement is rising. But it's not enough. It's not enough to deport Trump. We have to deport him as soon as possible. And we will. But it's not enough. We have to get free from financial capitalism. We have to get free from the stupidity of a system which is based on competition when our life has to be based on solidarity. We have to get free from a system which is based on the obsession of work. We have been working too much in the last 30 years and too much in the last 500 years. We have to get free from the obsession of work because knowledge and technology is giving us the possibility of working less and be more happy. You know, Trump, and not only Trump, but many other idiots in Europe and everywhere have become so strong because people are afraid of unemployment. But unemployment is a fake word, is a simulation, is a superstition. Unemployment is another way to say freedom from work. The problem is that we don't see the way out because we believe that work is a natural thing. Work is not a natural thing. Work, salaried work, I mean, is a perversion of free activity. And the technology gives us the possibility of coming out from 8, 9, 10 hours per day in the slavery of the factory and give us the possibility of working 4 hours per day. It's enough, it's too much 4 hours per day. And that gives us the possibility, you know, a guy called Larry Page, who is not a communist or an anarchist, he is the CEO of Google. And in an interview with Computer World in October 2014, Larry Page said, well, I don't understand how comes that the governments of the world want full employment and promise full employment. It's impossible, because if Google puts in the field of production all the new engines that we are inventing thanks to artificial intelligence, 50% of the present jobs will disappear overnight. That is the good news. But stupid people believe that this is a disgrace. And Trump wins because too many stupid people are frightened by technology and liberation from work. This is, in my opinion, the crucial point of the next years. Getting free from the superstition of salary, from the superstition of salaried work, and discovering the richness of knowledge, the richness of technology, and the possibility of living peacefully together, working less, and well, making more beautiful things that we know very well, but we tend to forget.
It's interesting to see that, I don't know if you saw that, thanks a lot, that even Elon Musk of Tesla Motors recently, several months ago, was advocating the universal basic income, which means that even in Silicon Valley, they are now actually discussing these topics. But to return to Trump, one of the most famous Primal Scream songs was Swastika Eyes. And it talked mainly about British politicians, right, if I'm correct. Do you think Swastika Eyes could be applied to Trump today, and how do you see the rise of Trump?
The Swastika Eyes could be applied to anybody, any authoritarian figure, really. It was written with that intention. Yeah, of course, I'm opposed to Donald Trump and his policies and his cabinet and his philosophy, if you can call it that. But maybe a good thing is like last week we had the Women's March in Washington, New York, Paris. I don't know if they had one here.
We had one, yes.
You had one in Zagreb. They had it in London. And, it mobilized a lot of people in the streets. And maybe a lot of people, maybe it's helping to politicize people and make people aware. And that can only be a good thing. So, yeah.
And Donald Trump is supposed to come to UK, right?
I think he's supposed to come to the UK next month. And maybe he's going to meet the Queen. Theresa May was groveling in the White House. I think that's what she wants to offer him, And him being a narcissist, there's no way he could turn that down. But there's a petition in the UK at the moment online, like 400,000 or 500,000 people have already signed it, demanding that Trump isn't allowed to come to the UK. So let's see what happens,
Yeah, I think it's even Jeremy Corbyn who said that Trump should be banned as long as the ban on the Muslims is taking place. How do you see the Labour Party in Britain? And because you come from a working class family, your father was a worker, a trade unionist, you were born and raised in Glasgow. The Labour Party took a lot of us from the European Union, where Britain is not anymore. I mean, it still is. Let's see what will happen with Article 50. Anyway, it took us with surprise. And the number of young people joining the Labour Party. How do you see the Labour Party?
Well, it was very exciting 2 years ago when Jeremy Corbyn stood to be the leader, and there was hundreds of thousands of people joined. I think there's now like 500,000 members, most of them have joined in the last 2 years. And I think that the reason for that was because they were getting behind Jeremy Corbyn's policies. And that was very interesting. It was quite inspirational to see that happen. Of course, it's torn the Labour Party apart. I guess what's happening, last summer they had the cabinet walked out, the shadow cabinet, the Labour cabinet walked out on Jeremy Corbyn, and were publicly criticising him. But they had another leadership contest, and he won with a huge majority against a candidate, Owen Smith, I think his name was, who was I think he came from Pfizer, is it the pharmaceutical company? I don't know what they're called, but he was a corporate executive. He works in the pharmaceutical industry, and suddenly he was this standing to be the leader of the Labour Party. But Corbyn beat him. But I just think it just seems like a real mess from what I can see. And also, it's a mess. I don't know how they're going to solve it. It seems like there's two parties there. You got Momentum, which is the youth kind of, left Labour, and then you've got the kind of centre-right, kind of Tony Blair type neoliberal Labour Party. People who've been MPs and cabinet ministers, and they're career politicians, and they're very much of a neoliberal mindset. So there's that struggle going on, and
How do you, Franco, see it? Do you think, when you look at the Labour Party, okay, we've been together several times to Greece at the time when Syriza was still rising, and even during the referendum, I think we were there at the same time, and there was still some hope. But what we can see now in the last years is that you also have some radical examples on the municipal level. For instance, Barcelona, under the government of Ada Colau. In Italy, Naples is doing some interesting things as well. You have also on the level, which is not even a local level, but a self-organized level, the cooperatives in Catalonia, for instance. That's interesting. There is Diem as well, which is fighting on a pan-European level. Some other political parties in Poland, for instance. Do you think that if you combine all of this together, it might be a resistance movement to the situation which you and Boby described, which is going precisely from the period of the 70s and Thatchers to this catastrophe, which is symbolized by Trump, but we should also mention Erdogan, Putin, Orban, and so on. And financial capitalism, of course, which does make this just two parts of the same coin.
Well, as I told you before, also in the hell, you can create spaces of good life. Barcelona is a place of good life, notwithstanding the tourists. And Naples is a place of good life, notwithstanding Camorra. It's not perfect, Naples is not perfect by definition, but the experiment of the Magistris, the mayor of Naples, who used to be a judge and who discovered politics, fighting against the Berlusconi's corruption and so on, and then became the mayor of this this city. Naples is a place where you can find areas that seem to be areas of peaceful communal life. The mayor has given to communities, social centers and so on, the mayor has given to them spaces, big spaces, abandoned. For instance, the former prison. I went to a place in the center of Napoli. Now it's called the Scunizzola Liberato. That means the liberated child in Napoletano. Once upon a time, it was the young people prison, you know, and you find there places of communal life, popular restaurants, a school for young people, a school for migrants, a school for children. People don't have money to buy things and to send children to the school sometimes, but the municipality of Naples is creating spaces where autonomy, social autonomy can create that kind of services that financial capitalism has cut and cut and cut. Naples. I know a bit also the situation of Barcelona. Barcelona is much more advanced than Naples. So in Barcelona you find people who are experimenting forms of technological, electronic, informatic management of social services and so we try in those cities, in those places, sometimes small, sometimes larger, we are experimenting possible ways out from the present situation. I don't think that we can start only from, it's not only a problem of expanding this kind of autonomy, it's more a problem of using these spaces of autonomy to experiment and create new concatenations for social life. I mean, I don't want to reduce the problem of political life in the next years to a problem of management of the city. It's also a problem of creating forms for a general transformation of life.
That's what I was asking. Do you think that these examples from the municipal local level could be universalized on the European level, for instance, or could be connected to the national level political parties or pan-European movements?
Well, first of all, we have to face the possibility of a final collapse of the European community, of the European Union, and then we have to imagine what should we do the day after. I think that we should not stop being Europeans, not for one single day. The day when, probably in May, when in the French elections, it's possible, I hope not, but it's quite possible that an anti-European party called National Front wins the elections, and that would mean the official declaration of the collapse. In that case, we have to say immediately, we do not defend the past, the financial feature of Europe. We start a process of imagination and of creation of a social Europe. That is the point. How can we do that? We can do that, one, starting from the already existing spaces of self-organization, of autonomy, and of experimentation, then we should avoid the danger of creating national parties, national organizations. This would be the catastrophe. The idea that the crisis of Europe obliges us to go back to a national identification would be economically a total catastrophe. Those who say, oh, we can get our economic sovereignty don't understand what they are talking about. What is national sovereignty in the age of global China? Means nothing. So don't think for 1 second to go back to national sovereignty, which is a fake thing. Think what kind of reticular, networked forms of self-organization we can create the day after at the European level. I mean, Berlin and Bologna and Barcelona have much more in common than the Italian thing. I want to be together with Glasgow, together with Berlin, and together with Sevilla, not with Casalecchio. You see, and this is possible because we live in an age in which the political reality and the economic reality, of course, is largely deterritorialized thanks to the network. I like the places, I like territory, I like the specificity, but I totally dislike the national identity. The national identity means ignorance and war. We have to be prepared to the collapse and keep calm and start a new European reality based on social needs and not on profit. This is my suggestion, if I may.
How do you, Bobby, before we open the floor for the audience, how do you see? Do you think there is a future for the European Union, or was Brexit the start of the beginning?
Well, we chatted earlier with Bifo when we went for lunch this afternoon, and we had bad feelings. We're just hoping that if Marie Le Pen wins in France, that will be the end of the European Union. So we'll know, when is the French elections? June? May. Yeah, well, we'll know in May.
Okay, thanks a lot. A big applause for our two gentlemen. And let me ask the theater to bring a bit of more of light, so we can see you as well. And once we can see you, then we can see your hands, and then we can take some questions. And you can pose the questions na hrvatskom or in English. Ok, ako imate pitanje, samo dignite ruku, mikrofon će doći do vas. Evo jednog pitanja sa lijeve strane. There is a question. Wait for the mic, please, because we have simultaneous translations, so our translators won't be able to understand anything. Why do you think that politically aware people, journalists or something, are much more quiet than they were through the past, 50 years? Because young people now are really politically unaware, and that's maybe why rock and roll or any music is not that political as it was. So
I think in the UK, we've had like 30 years of neoliberalism and deindustrialization, which affected, the trade union movement was destroyed. And I think, you've had mass depoliticization as well. So I think, I come from a socialist background. My father was a trade unionist, and he was very active in the labour movement all of his life. He still is. He's going to be 80 this year, but he's still an activist. And so he gave me class consciousness. But that was the 1970s, you know, and 80s. And I think as the years have gone on, you know, it just seems that people are less and less political. But I think, you know, in the last 5 years maybe, you know, younger people have noticed, look, if we go to demonstrations, there's lots of young people there. Like when Corbyn stood for the Labour Party, you know, there was, you know, hundreds of thousands of young people were, you know, inspired by that, and they were joining up just, maybe not for the Labour Party, but for, you know, socialist policies, that he was saying things that the other politicians weren't saying. And so I think there's a lot of hope, you know. I've got a lot of hope for young people, I think, you know. And I think young people have been forced to be political because, you know, I grew up under social democracy, so, you know, when I left school, I could go and, you know, if I wanted a job, you know, there were jobs available, and they were, you know, the trade unions were strong. So when I left school, I was an apprentice lithographic printer, and it was a well-paid job. It was very well protected because the union, that NGA, was very, very strong. In fact, the NGA and SOGA, the two print unions, were the unions that Thatcher went after she beat the miners. After that, she went after the print workers. So, you know, the unions were powerful, so jobs were pretty well paid. And as I say, you know, also if I had chosen to go to art school or university, the state would have paid my way through. Now, young people have got to pay to go into further education. So that instantly politicises them, I feel. And yeah, so I don't know, I guess I think that, and also I think a lot of the bands maybe are, like the Sex Pistols were working class. Johnny Rotten came from council estate in Finsbury Park, like a ghetto, you know, with blacks. You know, he was Irish diaspora, you know, there'd be like Jamaicans there, and all sorts of people, Scots. And a lot of the bands, the rock bands now, come from maybe middle to upper middle class backgrounds, so maybe they've got less to kick against. Do you know what I mean? That, you know, that's just one theory, but I really don't know.
Franco, I can see you writing something. Is it for this answer? Do you want to comment as well before we take the next question?
I cannot tell.
You're writing a book, but you're writing in my notebook, so I will know, you know? Even if you don't tell me, I will know.
It's not a note.
Can you write? Aha, okay. Well, it's a secret. He just told me when the future will end. Okay.
It's an open secret. I am almost totally dead.
We have.
I don't understand almost nothing. Oh, I forgot. You see, I'm almost.
Yeah. So Franco just asked me to help out with some questions. So when you pose questions, try to be a bit louder.
Generally, when I speak with an English-speaking person, but also with an Italian-speaking person, I don't understand. But I pretend.
But which language do you understand then?
Pardon?
Which language do you don't understand? An English-speaking and an Italian?
I don't understand anything. I mean, it's a problem of ears. I've been operated many times because I'm deaf.
Bifo was deaf
So
in one ear.
I read lips.
So you didn't understand us at all tonight?
You have very, very interesting lips.
Oh my God.
Don't equivocate. Boby is talking in a way that for me is very difficult to read lips. And
because he usually
if
sings.
someone asks me a question from the third row, of course I cannot read the lips.
Okay, we could speak about kissing as well. No. Are there any other? There are two questions there. Thanks a lot for the questions, and then we'll move also to the other parts of the theater. There are more questions than two. Yeah, please.
Good evening. I'll try to speak real slow.
Thank you very much.
You were talking about artificial intelligence earlier. So I was reading recently about sort of a consortium forming from the big companies, regular standard things like Apple, Google, so on. So I'm curious, like, how do you see this being regulated? What do you think will happen, and what would be the ideal, actually, development? Is it going to stay free, more like the web, or is it going to be taken by the governments? Something in that direction would be my question. Thanks.
Artificial intelligence.
Now he's joking, he got the questions. You know that recently Google and all the big Silicon Valley companies formed this consortium for artificial intelligence. Do you think this will be regulated in a way, or it will be taken over by governments? Actually, I think it won't be taken over by governments, but it's Silicon Valley. But that's my answer. Ah, you did?
Yeah.
You just wanted to see my lips moving.
Yeah, sure. I don't believe in regulation. I don't believe that the problem is regulating Google. I don't believe that the problem is regulating the technological corporations or so on and so on. I believe in autonomy and in self-organization, and I try to explain because this is for me the most important problem of the next years. We are facing a sort of worsening, to say the least, of the social reality. Okay, simultaneously, in another dimension, in the dimension of technological innovation and of the creation of a new collective brain, we are witnessing a very dangerous but very rich development. Let's call it Silicon Valley. But contrary to Evgeny Morozov, who is a great friend and a very interesting writer, I don't believe that the Silicon Valley is an enemy or a dangerous place. First of all, Silicon Valley is not in California, it's everywhere, it's us. Is 100 million cognitive workers of the world, engineers, programmers, poets, designers, who are creating the network day by day. First, global Silicon Valley. Secondly, I know very well that the technological corporations are aiming to profit and also to social control. And I know very well that there is a huge danger in that I call neurototalitarianism, the subjection of the collective and the individual mind to the domination of the machine. But this is not depending only on the will of Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. This is depending on a fight, on a social process that is deploying everywhere in the world. I mean, you know, what did we do in the 70s in Italy? We went to a big factory called Fiat because it was the place of the main corporation, the place of power, but it was also a place of social conflict. What did he do, Vladimir Lenin, in the year 1917? He did good things and bad things, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't care. What I care is the methodology. He did not speak with 100 million Russian farmers. He spoke with 10,000 workers of the Putilov factory, because power was concentrated there. Now power is, the productive power is concentrated in the global Silicon Valley. This is the place that we have to change. This is the place where we have the possibility of subverting power, of getting free from the domination of power. It's, the Silicon Valley is not a flat place. It's a place of conflict, of social conflict, of economic, political, cultural conflict. The network is something that cannot be definitely dominated. It's a place where change and transformation is happening forever. So let's try to understand what's the way to get free from the domination inside the global Silicon Valley. The global Silicon Valley is the place, the deterritorialized place, where future life is invented. And it's us, the inventors of a possible happy life for the future. So I don't fear artificial intelligence and technology. No, I fear very much the technological innovation if it is in the hands of a small elite of corporate people. But I know that that place can become the place of a conflict and of a liberation. It's, to be frank, it's my only hope.
Okay, now questions. I would take first a question. If there is a question for Boby, then please raise a hand. Yeah, there is a question for Boby in the middle of the hall, and then we will jump, not literally, to the balcony and see if there are some questions there. Yep.
I have a question for you. A lot of social and political commentators have blamed the forced political correctness culture as a part of what is happening now. So how do you see it as a musician? Do you feel like political correctness has gone out of hand and in a way has caused, some megalomaniac like Trump to happen?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I really don't think so. And when you talk about, when populist politicians talk about political correction, they mean it's okay to abuse women. They mean it's okay to abuse people of color. It's abusive. It's always abusive. And so, that's what they mean by that. And I don't really think that, I think the effects of neoliberal capitalism are what is causing populism. And because the living conditions of people and the prospects they have for their futures and their presents. And there's a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, and I don't really think that political correctness is, I think it's just another term. It's like an advertising slogan that populist politicians use. And it also gives them a way out. It allows them to use the language of abuse publicly and give them a slight sense of the thrill of danger that they're breaking a taboo, they're breaking a social taboo. And also, I guess that on some level, certain people who are racist or sexist or homophobic can identify with that. So maybe that's, they identify with a populist politician who speaks like that and breaks that taboo. That's what I think.
More questions. We promised the balcony, so if there are questions on the balcony, I hope to see you. On the other balcony, nothing. Okay, it was your last chance. We return to the downstairs. There are two questions there.
Hello, I have a question about the unity of Europe. You were talking 10 or 15 minutes ago. So the thing you were saying is that we should all be united on a level in Europe, but then again you're attacking an idea of nationalism in a way. Isn't being unified as a European the same thing being as unified as a nation, just on a bigger level? And one of your critiques was, oh, if we go back to national, then an economical catastrophe happens. But 20 minutes before that, you're saying we have to liberate ourselves from work and from money and everything that goes with it. That's kind of contradictory, if you ask me.
Franco, I think it was a question for you. Yeah, what was the contradiction precisely? Between what and what?
The contradiction is behind that you're criticizing going back to national or nationalism, but then again you're defending Europe because that will give us economical stability. And the first part was, if you didn't understand, was being unified as a European is good, but being unified as a nation is not. Why? It's the same thing, but on a smaller or a larger scale. And for war, you said, if we identify ourselves as European, that means there is still us and them. We are Europeans, they're Africans, they're Asians, etc., etc.
That's a good point, and I will answer quoting a philosopher called Julien Benda. Julien Benda, in a text written in the year 1933, said, if you want to create a political community in Europe, you have to forget about your being. You will never create a true political entity in Europe if you start from identity, because there is no such thing as European identity. Europe is, as a concept and as an anthropological and historical entity, is the contrary of identity. Europe is France and Germany, is Romanticism and Enlightenment, is Protestantism and Judaism and Catholicism and Orthodox religion. Europe is Muslims and Christians. Europe is sun and fog. So Europe is nothing. And actually Benda says, don't start from your being. You should start from your mind, from your spirit, from your desire, from your will. So I will be frank. When I say Europe, I don't think to the continent. First of all, I think that the Northern African coast is totally part of Europe. Then I think that Israel is part of Europe. Then I think that the Middle East is absolutely part of Europe. Then I think that Russia is evidently part of Europe, and so on and so on. I say Europe, but I mean the international. Europe is a good starting point, and Europe is the negation of borders. This is Europe. Of course, we have to start from some point, and that point is Paris and Berlin for historical reasons. But if you are able to put together Germans and French, then that means that you can put together Chileans and Chinese and Alaska people, you know, because the greatness of the European concept is not geographical, is not political, is not economic, is philosophical. Europe means the Enlightenment and the Romantic. And you know what it means. Romantic is the sense of origins, the sense of the body, the warmth of the social relation, the relation to history, to the past, and so on. Enlightenment means the coldness of the law, of the rule, of the order, of the reason. So putting together Romantic and Enlightenment means starting a process that sometimes we have called internationalism. Internationalism is the only way to escape the coming war. Once upon a time, we believed in the possibility of overcoming war thanks to the fact that the workers of the world have a common interest, working less and enjoying life more. It's easy. It's absolutely easy. It has become very difficult in the neoliberal age, but we have to go back to that possibility. I will be short, but I have to say something. Recently I read a text of a guy called Zbigniew Brzezinski, a Polish-American who has been very important in the American establishment in the last 40 years. He was the Secretary of State of the Jimmy Carter administration at the end of the 70s. He has been very important in fueling the Afghan war, the war, and also has been very important in the destruction of the Soviet Union. He is the mastermind of the American ability to dissolve. You know, I read a text by Zbigniew Brzezinski published in an American magazine called The Nationalist Interest some months ago. It's an incredibly interesting text. He says, Daesh, Islam terrorism, is only the beginning of the revenge of the colonized people. Then it will be the turn of the Africans, of the Indians, of the South Americans, everybody will revolt against the white race dominations. And he says the history of colonization is a history of massacres, plundering, destruction, violence, and humiliation. We, the white race, will pay for that, and we pay with a global, a planetary bloodbath. He says, not me, believe me, you can digit in the internet Zbigniew Brzezinski towards a global realignment, and he speaks of planetary bloodbath. Why? What's happened? We forgot about internationalism, because internationalism was and is the only possibility of escaping a planetary bloodbath. The showdown of colonialism will come, but the people of the world can understand only one simple thing, that the workers are united in their material interest. If we forget that, it's war, it's global devastation, it's death for everybody. That is not me, but Zbigniew Brzezinski who says that. So Europe is something more large than the territory that with these miserable borders. I hate nations, I hate borders, I hate Europe, if Europe is a nation. But Europe is not.
Yeah, unfortunately it seems that even in this country, many people forgot that we once had something which was called the non-aligned movement, which was precisely led by this idea of progressive internationalism. Just to mention it. I've seen another question, maybe that could be the last question, or just raise your hand so we can see how many questions do we have. We have one question, two questions there. Balcony, did balcony change the mind? No. Okay, we will take three. Okay, we will take three questions at the same time, and then we will answer it like that.
Okay, hello.
Hello.
Good evening. You're talking almost the whole evening about the end, in one way or another. The end of the society as we know it, the end of the future. So I don't have a question. I have some kind of suggestion, if I may, for Bobby, to change the name of the band from Primal Scream to Final Scream.
What do you say about that, Bobby? Or Primal End. That would be my suggestion. Primal End. So the end is all the time here.
Maybe we'll call our very last album that. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Hello. I have strong voice. Anyway, good evening, dear guests. I have one question for Professor from Italy. You are a very romantic man. You says that. But why you hate Europe? How you can see any way to go somewhere on some better life if you are so down? If you hate Europe, if you are talking about some hell, we all of us know that we are victims of technology. In this theater, in this holy house.
Holy.
No, holy, yes. No person without Mobitel.
Ah, I understand.
Anybody has. And we are all victims of all VIP, Tele2, Telecom, and etc., etc. Companies, yes, telecommunications.
Yeah, just for them because they don't know the Croatian. Okay.
We all, not just financially, but mentally, in our brains, and I really agree with you when you are with some your statement, but I suggest some stronger and statement with more hope.
Okay.
Everything is interest, but with love. And
okay, we got the questions. Sorry to interrupt you. I think, Franco, you could answer, because I think there was a slight misunderstanding when he said that he hates Europe. He said that he hates the Europe of borders.
I said, and I repeat, I hate Europe if Europe is a nation. But Europe is not a nation. In the words, it can become, but it would be the most horrible of nations. It would be the nation of the colonialists and of the aggressors. No, Europe is not a nation. I quoted Julian Benda exactly because I think that Julian Benda was meaning that Europe is not the embodiment of an identity. It's not the embodiment of an identity because inside the body of Europe you have many identities. So Europe is not a nation, and as a post-national, internationalist entity, I do not hate Europe. I feel strongly that I love Europe. I love Europe. Disgusting expression, but you understand me, right? Then we are not victims of technology. We are victims of a social use, of a social exploitation of technology. The mobile, the computer, the mechanical and electronic technology are not our enemies, are the condition for our emancipation from work, from the limitation of the territory, and so on and so on. But if those technologies are used to oblige us to work in worse conditions, to work more, to depend more on the constraints of capitalism, then technology becomes a special, the creation of a new technology is never an only technological fact or an only technological process. In the creation of a technology, you have the invention of new possibility of social relation. So it's about social relation that you have to think when you think about the future of a technology. It's thanks to the technology that we have become, and we can become more rich and more free.
And there was one last question also there.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. First of all, whenever I'm hearing about capitalism, I always remember Michael Moore's movie, Capitalism, the Love Story. And in that movie, he has the very good question, like, why do we put up this situation where the 1% of the richest own more than the bottom 95%, and the only answer he could come up with was that those 95% are hoping that one day they can be in that one top percent. So do you believe that maybe music or anything else can be the change, can make the change in people's state of mind, of how they perceive themselves and their future and what they want in life? So first for Bobby, I think that would be a better question for you. Thank you.
I'm not sure that music is going to instill class consciousness in people. I think what people need is the class consciousness. They need to be made aware politically, why we're in the present state. And, I think music can inspire, and, it can be, it can be a transformative experience for people. But I don't know if music can give people political education. But what it can do, and what artists can do and bands can do, is they could provide young people with a frame of reference. And that could be films, writers, other musicians, just broaden the scope of their interests, when I was younger, I never went to university. My university was buying NME or Sounds or going to punk concerts, and reading interviews with the artists, with the bands, and they would talk about the things that they were into. So that turned into people like William Burroughs and Pasolini and Fassbinder, and that's how I learned the stuff that kind of has inspired me. And I think rock and roll, it can work like that. But as for bringing on the revolution, I'm not too sure about that. It takes a lot more than just a rock concert or a rock record. I think a rock concert or a rock record can provide people, an individual with an epiphany, and it can transform their lives. My life was definitely transformed by the Sex Pistols and punk rock, and Malcolm McLaren and Johnny Rotten both, spoke to me as a teenager, not directly, but through their work and in interviews. And they said, you can be a creative person. You can do what we are doing. And I took that message, and I became a creative person, and it changed my life because my parents didn't know I could be creative. My teachers didn't know that I could be creative. I was destined for an industrial scrap heap, and that was my future. But because of punk and my interest in punk, I became, I began making music. I wrote for fanzines. I made record sleeves. I made collages on the photocopier, on the photocopying machine in the factory that I worked in, and discovered that I could actually make things. So I think rock and roll can transform lives. Like, you know, it can work in a positive, inspirational way, like the way it worked on me. That's it.
I think this is a very good note to end, and I hope, even if you cannot make a revolution, maybe Primal Scream can make a concert in this holy house one day.
Yeah,
and Bifo can sing as well.
We might bring the chandelier down, though.
Well, that wouldn't be good in Croatia. This is a holy luster, kako se to zove. Here, I think that might cause a revolution, but a different kind of revolution.
Beheading.
Thanks a lot, Bobby. Thanks a lot, Bifo. Thank you, the best audience.